The quiet man in car 12. The morning was cool. The train platform buzzing with soft chatter, rolling luggage, and the occasional call over the loudspeaker. It was a crisp weekday in Switzerland, and one of Europe's most luxurious high-speed trains was preparing for departure. Passengers in designer coats stepped into first class, sipping espresso from porcelain cups and scrolling through their latest stock updates. But at the far end of the platform, almost unnoticed, walked a tall man, in worn boots, faded jeans, and a black hoodie. No entourage, no flashy luggage. He carried only a backpack, one shoulder strap half torn, and in his right hand a paperback novel with bent pages. The man was Keanu Reeves. Most didn't recognize him at first. The beard helped. The sunglasses helped more. But those who looked closely might have caught the familiar softness in his expression, the calm in his posture, and the faint sadness behind his smile. He wasn't here for attention. He was just trying to catch a train to Lucerne. As he reached the platform, a young woman in a red uniform stepped out from the carriage. Her badge said Stella. She looked him up and down, then forced a smile. "Sir," she said, gently but firmly, "this is the first-class section." Keanu stopped. He glanced at his ticket. "Yes, this is where I'm seated," he said calmly, handing her the paper. She barely glanced at it. "Sir, I think you're mistaken. First class is for premium guests. The economy entrance is back that way." He hesitated for a second, not angry, not embarrassed, just surprised. "I understand," he said, his voice quiet. "But this ticket was purchased yesterday. Seat 1A. "It must be a mistake," she insisted. "Please move to car 12. People behind him were now whispering. Some passengers leaned in, staring. A teenage boy squinted and whispered, "Is that?" Keanu nodded, folded the ticket, and smiled. "Okay," he said. "Car 12 it is." He walked down the length of the train, past polished windows and judging eyes. Every step was a reminder of how humility is not about surrender, but about strength. He entered the economy car, slid into a small, crowded seat beside an elderly woman, knitting a red scarf, and gently smiled at her. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. "Not anymore," she chuckled. What no one on the train knew, what even the staff didn't realize, was that Keanu hadn't just booked first class. He had purchased the entire first-class car through his travel company to test the customer service of Europe's most expensive train line. The staff never checked the name. They just assumed, they judged, and they turned him away. From his small seat in car 12, Keanu took out a small notepad and quietly scribbled down notes. The scarf-knitting lady beside him looked curious. "You're writing something?" "Just thoughts," he said, smiling. "About what?" He looked out the window as the train started moving. "About how people treat strangers." 2 hours into the journey. A loud noise echoed through the train. The doors between cars had opened. A group of business-class passengers were walking down the corridor, confused. A heated discussion had broken out between a conductor and a man in a gray suit. "I paid extra for silence," the man barked. "And now I'm being relocated to coach? Ridiculous." Keanu watched quietly. A mother with 2 kids tried to settle them as the confusion grew. Passengers grumbled, phone cameras came out. Finally, the manager of the train company boarded at the next stop. He wore a sharp blue blazer and a silver watch. He stormed into the first-class car with 2 assistants. The moment he saw seat 1A was empty, he frowned. "Who told the passenger to leave this seat?" No one answered. "Do you even know who that man was?" he snapped. He turned to a nearby staff member. "Call headquarters, now." By the time the train reached Lucerne, the news had already begun to spread. The staff who turned Keanu away were now frozen in disbelief, and as Keanu walked quietly off the train, the scarf-knitting woman beside him stopped him. "You were very kind," she said. "You didn't raise your voice." "Thank you," he smiled. "Sometimes silence says more than shouting." She looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" He smiled and handed her the note he had been writing. On the paper, it said, "Respect isn't about titles or suits. It's about how you treat someone when you think they're no one." He tipped his head gently and disappeared into the crowd. At that very moment, Hundreds of miles away in Los Angeles, a board meeting was taking place at a major entertainment and travel company. A woman in a black blazer pointed at the screen. "We just received a report from our founder. He personally tested the luxury train service in Switzerland. The staff failed the kindness audit." Another executive gasped. "So, what happens now?" The woman looked at the group. "We withdraw our $857 million partnership, effective immediately." A pause. Silence. Then panic. Meanwhile, on a bench near the station, Keanu Reeves sat with a sandwich in one hand and the wind brushing through his hair. He wasn't angry. He was just thinking about kindness, about how much it still mattered, and about what happens when the world forgets. The media storm begins. By the time the sun set over Lucerne, the entire country had started whispering. No official statements were made, not yet, but somewhere deep in the customer service reports of the luxury train company, a hidden file was quietly leaked by an intern. The file had one sentence: "Celebrity passenger Keanu Reeves denied rightful first-class access. Judgmental behavior by staff." Audit failed. Within hours, the screenshot spread like wildfire. At first, only a few niche travel blogs picked it up. They speculated, debated. But when one user shared a blurry photo of Keanu sitting beside an old woman, smiling softly, everything changed. The internet recognized the man the world knew for his kindness, patience, and humility. And it erupted. The hashtag started trending. Gen respect Keanu, train fail, 57. First class heartback in California. A young tech reporter named Elena saw the Yao buzz building. She worked at a mid-sized outlet often overlooked in favor of bigger news giants. But when she read the leaked report, something clicked in her. She stood up at her desk and walked straight into her editor's office. "Give me 2 days and a plane ticket," she said. "I'll find him." "Him?" The editor raised an eyebrow. "Keanu Reeves. He just turned a train ride into a $857 million fallout. And he did it without a word. I want the story." The editor paused, nodded slowly, and handed her his own credit card. Meanwhile, inside the luxury train company's headquarters, the CEO was in a full meltdown. Phones rang nonstop. Investors demanded answers, and half the public relations team had already quit. The woman in charge, Clara Bueller, stood at the edge of a glass conference room, her hair tied tight and her jaw clenched. "Find me the name of the employee who denied him first-class entry," she ordered. "Ma'am," someone said carefully. "There were 2. One of them was Stella. She's new. Fire her. And tell the board we're sending an apology letter to Mr. Reeves. We need to fix this before the press kills us." But it was too late. That evening, Keanu walked alone through a quiet forest trail just outside Lucerne. The wind rustled gently through the leaves, and the world felt calm. Far away from the headlines, the panic, and the screens, he had no idea what storm was coming. In his pocket, his phone buzzed over and over. Calls, texts, notifications. But he ignored them. He stopped near a lake, pulled out a small thermos, and took a sip of tea. The still water reflected the evening sky. Then, footsteps, soft, hesitant. A girl's voice. "Mr. Reeves?" He turned. Standing there was a young woman breathing heavily, holding a camera and a notepad. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I know you didn't ask for attention. I know you didn't do it for publicity. But please, can I ask you a few questions?" Keanu looked at her. She was young, maybe 26. Her eyes were honest and her hands shook a little. "You came all the way here?" he asked. "Yes, from Los Angeles." He nodded. "You're not from a tabloid, are you?" "No," she said. "Just someone who believes kindness still matters." He sat down on a bench near the lake and gestured for her to join him. "Okay," he said. "Ask me." Elena flipped open her notebook. "Why didn't you speak up when they denied you?" He shrugged. "I didn't need to. Their actions spoke louder than anything I could have said. Sometimes it's not about correcting the moment. It's about observing it, learning from it." She hesitated. "Did you know about the fallout?" The deal you pulled? That wasn't my decision, he said quietly. It was our team's. We have a policy. We don't partner with companies that fail human decency tests. This was one of them. Elena was silent for a moment. You could have embarrassed them publicly, made a statement, demanded an apology. What good would that do? He said. Real change doesn't come from loud anger. It comes from quiet consequences. She looked up from her notes. What do you want people to learn from this? Keanu stared out at the lake again. That everyone deserves kindness, especially when they don't look like they deserve it. That night, Elena published her piece. It was raw, honest, and filled with Keanu's quiet wisdom. She titled it, The Man in Seat 12B, How Kindness Cost $857 Million but Taught the World Something Better. Within 3 hours, it had 5 million reads. Within a day, it reached 50. Governments, business schools, ethics boards, and travel companies all started talking. What does it really mean to serve the public? How does one act of judgment destroy decades of trust? And why is humility more powerful than a title? Back at the train company, Stella, the young woman who had denied him first-class access, sat alone on the curb outside the station. Her uniform badge had been taken away. Her eyes were red. She held a small envelope in her hands. It had no return address, just her name. Inside was a note. It read, I don't blame you. I forgive you. We all judge sometimes. What matters is what we learn from it. Be kind to the next stranger. No signature. Just the note. She folded it gently, held it to her heart, and wept. Not because she had been fired, but because the man she had turned away was the one who taught her how to see again. When the silence got loud 3 days after Elena's article went live, the world was no longer quiet. Major news networks picked up the story. Anchors debated it during prime time. Talk shows invited travel executives, ethicists, and even former train passengers to share their views. Everyone had something to say, but the man at the center of it all remained silent. Keanu Reeves did not give another interview. He didn't post a single statement online. While the media storm swirled across continents, he was hiking alone near the French border, watching the sky and listening to birds. But silence has its own kind of noise. Meanwhile, inside the boardroom of the luxury train company, things were unraveling. Clara Bueller, the CEO, stood with trembling hands as the shareholders grilled her. Do you understand the scale of this? One man snapped. Our public trust has evaporated overnight. Another one added, you let your staff humiliate one of the most beloved public figures alive, and you didn't even know until he left a handwritten note. Clara tried to speak, but no words came. A third shareholder held up a document. We have 3 more clients who just canceled long-term partnerships. They're pulling out a total of 1.4 billion euros. And why? Because we lack human empathy. Your leadership is under review. The room fell silent. Not because of the numbers, but because everyone realized something deeper. This wasn't just about one man. It was about what they'd become. In another part of the world, a school teacher in New Delhi read the story to her students. After finishing the article, she looked at her class and asked, "Why do you think he didn't fight back?" A boy in the third row raised his hand. Because he didn't need to. The truth fought for him. Back in Switzerland, Stella sat alone at a small cafe. She had been avoiding the internet. Her name was everywhere now. Her face had been shared without consent. Strangers called her heartless. Some sent messages filled with hate. She felt like disappearing. But then the bell above the cafe door rang, and an old woman stepped in. "You're the girl from the train," she said gently, holding a red scarf. Stella looked up. "Do I know you?" "No," the woman said kindly. "But I know the man you turned away. I sat next to him. He didn't hate you. He didn't even judge you. He just wanted peace. And you gave him something more valuable than a seat." "What's that?" Stella asked, her voice shaking. A moment to remind the world what kindness really looks like. She handed the scarf to Stella. He asked me to pass this on. Wrapped around the scarf was a note in Keanu's handwriting. It read, "Even when we fall short, we still have the power to rise with grace." Stella held the scarf to her chest, tears falling quietly onto the table. In California, Elena received an email from an address she didn't recognize. It simply said, "Thank you for telling the story the right way." It wasn't about me. It was about all of us. Attached was a photo of Keanu standing with two monks near a temple in France. He looked peaceful, almost invisible, as if fame had never existed. But in the background, someone had carved something into the temple wall. Be kind, even when they don't deserve it. Meanwhile, public reaction had begun shifting, not just in anger toward the train company, but in deep reflection. One airline introduced a compassion protocol for all staff. A chain of hotels launched a kindness check at management level. Universities added real-life empathy scenarios into business classes, calling it the Reeves response. This wasn't about punishing a company anymore. It was about remembering something we had all forgotten: how we treat people when no one is watching. But the most surprising moment came during a live awards show in Los Angeles. A presenter, an A-list actor, took the stage. He cleared his throat and said, "We all have the right to be respected. But Keanu showed us that the real power is in how we act when we're disrespected." Then he looked at the camera and added, "To the man in seat 12B, thank you for the quiet lesson." We heard it loud and clear. The audience gave a long-standing ovation. Not for the actor, not for a film, but for a man who didn't even attend the event. And in a remote mountain village, Keanu Reeves turned off his phone and smiled. Not because he had made headlines, but because someone, somewhere, was choosing kindness, maybe for the first time in a long time, maybe because of him. The boardroom twist 4 weeks had passed. The media firestorm had cooled. But the impact of Keanu Reeves's quiet action was still echoing around the world. Articles continued to appear in newspapers, in classrooms, in podcasts. Business leaders called it a case study in dignity. Psychologists called it a mirror to society. But at the center of it, Keanu had vanished. No interviews, no red carpets, no social media, just silence. Until one morning, in the very heart of Zurich, inside the polished marble walls of the luxury train company, something unexpected happened. A security guard walked into the lobby with a puzzled look on his face. Behind him was a man in a black hoodie, jeans, and soft leather shoes. "Sir," the receptionist said nervously, "do you have an appointment?" The man pulled back his hood. Gasps. The room went still. It was Keanu Reeves. Clara Bueller, the CEO, nearly dropped her coffee when her assistant burst into the room. "He's here," the assistant whispered. "Who?" "Him." Clara's heart skipped. She rushed to the hallway, trying to keep calm. When she saw him standing there, quietly looking at a painting on the wall, she froze. "Mr. Reeves," she said, voice trembling. I didn't expect—" "I know," he interrupted, smiling gently. "But I thought it was time we talked." He followed her into the conference room. The same boardroom where they had discussed firing Stella. The same table where they had counted their losses. Keanu took a seat. No lawyers, no team. Just him. "Look," Clara began, "we know we messed up. Badly. We've issued public apologies. We've launched empathy training for staff. But I have to ask." She leaned forward. "Why are you here?" Keanu placed a small envelope on the table. "This is not about revenge," he said softly. "And it's not about image." Clara looked confused. "Then what is it about?" "Growth," he replied. "But not just yours. Mine too." He nodded to the envelope. "Open it." She slid the paper out and read it aloud. "I forgive you, and I challenge you. Use this failure to build something better. Not to fix a brand, but to restore trust. Start a new program. Real compassion, real people. And don't put my name on it. Don't make it a campaign, make it a movement." Her hands trembled. "But we lost everything. The media destroyed us. How can we come back from this?" "By being better than who you were," he said. 1. Seat doesn't define your company, but what you do next does. After he left the building, Clara sat there in silence. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a CEO. She felt like a student, and she was ready to learn. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment in Bern, Stella was trying to move forward. She had taken a job in a small bookstore. Quiet work. Simple hours. She avoided the internet, avoided cameras, and avoided judgment, until a tall woman in a business suit stepped through the door. "You're Stella, right?" Stella looked up from the register. "Yes." "My name is Clara Bueller," the woman said, "former CEO of Alpen Express." Stella stiffened. "I came to apologize," Clara continued. "Not for firing you, but for failing you. You didn't need punishment. You needed support. And I didn't give it." Stella looked away. "I don't need your apology," she whispered. "I know," Clara said, "but I needed to say it." She handed her a small folder. Inside were 2 pages, a job offer and a new program proposal. "It's called the Humanity Desk," Clara explained. "You'd be training our staff, not in rules, in respect. We need someone who's been on both sides of the mistake, and I want that someone to be you." Stella stared at the folder. "You trust me?" "Keanu did," Clara said, "and that's enough for me." 2 months later, a new video quietly appeared on the company's site. It wasn't a commercial. No dramatic music, no actors, just real footage. A woman stood in front of a room full of train staff. "Hi," she said. "My name is Stella. I once made a mistake. I judged a man by his shoes. I lost my job, and I thought that was the end. But a quiet man showed me it could be a beginning." She smiled. "We're here to talk about what respect really means, and how we can offer it before it's earned." In Los Angeles, Elena watched the video and smiled. Then her phone rang. "This is Elena," she answered. A familiar voice came through the speaker. "Nice job," Keanu said. "You told it right." "Thank you," she whispered. "Next time," he said, "maybe you can tell a story where no one has to lose everything first." "I'd like that," she said. He chuckled softly. "Me too." Then he hung up, and once again the quiet man vanished into the world. Not to escape attention, but to give space for others to shine. The kindness ripple months had passed since Keanu Reeves walked away from the train station in Lucerne. Yet the ripple of his quiet actions had only grown deeper. On the surface, people talked about the money lost, the contracts canceled, the media, waves that followed. But beneath it all, something more important had started to grow. Something invisible, quiet, and powerful. A shift in the way people treated each other, a whisper of humility in boardrooms. A moment of pause at customer counters. A second thought before judging someone's clothes, accent, or name. The world was learning, and it all began in Car 12. On a snowy morning in Tokyo, a young executive named Kenji sat in a crowded train. He was late for a meeting, frustrated, tired, and tense. Then he saw an old man standing near the door holding the rail with shaking hands. No one moved. Everyone looked at their phones. But Kenji stood up. "Please," he said. "Take my seat." Old man sat down, smiled softly, and nodded in thanks. "Thank you," he whispered. "We need more men like the one in the Swiss story." Kenji blinked. "You know that story?" "Of course," the man chuckled. "Who doesn't?" Kenji looked out the window, heart lighter. He hadn't realized the story had reached this far. In a small village in Ghana, a teacher gathered children around a chalkboard. She wrote a name. Keanu Reeves. Then she asked, "What did he do?" A boy raised his hand. "He taught the world that silence is strong." The teacher smiled. "And what do we do when someone treats us unfairly?" A girl answered, "We don't fight. We forgive. But we never forget the lesson." In London, AI, corporate CEO canceled a high-end event and used the budget to set up a compassion bonus fund for staff going through personal hardship. He called the idea the Reeves Initiative. Quietly, other companies followed. Airlines, hotels, law, firms, banks. They didn't announce it loudly. They just changed one policy at a time. One gesture at a time. But far away from all this, in a quiet cabin near Montreal, Keanu Reeves lived simply. No press, no staff, just peace. He spent his mornings walking through snow-covered trails and his evenings reading letters. Yes, letters. Thousands of them, from people of all ages. A homeless veteran who had been offered a job after someone read his sign differently. A single mother who had been helped at a train station by a stranger who refused to judge. A little girl who gave her lunch to a classmate because Keanu would do that. He read them all. Some made him laugh. Some made him cry. But one letter stood out. It was from Stella. It said, "Dear Mr. Reeves, I thought being fired would be the worst day of my life. But now I think it was the best. Thank you for not embarrassing me. Thank you for forgiving me. I now train others to see beyond appearances. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. Every day. You taught me that dignity doesn't shout. It whispers, and if you listen close, it changes everything." Keanu folded the letter, placed it in a small wooden box with dozens of others, and sat back. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. Not because the world had changed, but because people had chosen to change themselves. In Los Angeles, Elena stood on stage at a global storytelling summit. She had been invited as a speaker. Her talk was titled, "The Man in Seat 12B. He didn't tweet, she said. He didn't protest. He didn't threaten lawsuits. He just accepted the insult and let the world see what happened next." She paused. "And that," she continued, "taught us more than any viral speech ever could." The room went silent, not because they were shocked, but because they were moved. She stepped down. In the crowd, someone clapped, then someone else. Soon, the entire room stood, not for her, for the truth she carried. On that same night, an unexpected package arrived at the train company's new humanity desk. Inside was a copy of the old passenger list from the day Keanu had been denied. His seat was still marked. 1A, but beside it was a sticky note in fresh handwriting. "Never forget seat 12B. That's where the world changed." The last station, it was a calm morning in Lucerne. The same train station, the same tracks, but the world had changed since that quiet man in worn boots had once been turned away. People no longer rushed without looking. They held doors open. They smiled more. Something about the space felt lighter, as if respect itself had returned. A familiar train was scheduled that day. The first-class car had been renovated. New signs hung above the door. "Respect all. Judge none." But there was something different about today's journey. It wasn't the passengers. It wasn't the scenery. It was a man quietly boarding car 12 once again. Keanu Reeves. He chose the same seat beside the window, seat 12BA. No camera followed him. No reporter waited outside. But somehow, people noticed. One by one, they passed and nodded. No one asked for photos. No one bothered him. They simply left space. Respect, finally, without request. The elderly woman who had once sat beside him and knit a red scarf. She had passed away months ago, peacefully in her sleep. Her son had written Keanu a letter. "My mother spoke of you often. She said you made her feel seen. Thank you for making her last journey the most dignified one." Keanu kept the scarf, wrapped it around his wrist as he looked out the window. As the train moved, a mother and child sat behind him. The little girl peeked forward. "Mama," she whispered. "That's the man from the story." Keanu turned, smiled softly, and offered the child his book. "You like stories?" he asked. The girl nodded quickly. "Then write your own one day," he said. "But make sure it has kindness in it." She held the book tight, as if it were treasure. In the back of the train, Stella now wore a new badge. Not as a hostess, but as the director of staff development. She walked the aisles quietly, observing, not judging. She saw Keanu and stopped. He looked up and nodded. "Long time," he said. "I didn't know you were on board," she replied. "I didn't know I needed to be," he said. She smiled. "Thank you. for giving me a second chance. You gave it to yourself, he answered. I just stayed out of your way. Stella blinked back tears. I still have your note. So do I, he said, pointing to his wrist. The red thread from the scarf was still wrapped around it. Far away at the headquarters of a powerful investment firm, a new executive stood before a crowd. On the wall behind her was a simple phrase, Seat 12B Standard. What is the Seat 12B Standard? Someone asked. She smiled. It means we treat every person with the same dignity we'd give a CIO. No assumptions, no dismissals, no excuses. Because the man in Seat 12B taught us that you never know who's sitting beside you or what they're going through. And what of Elena, the young reporter who wrote the first story? She now hosted a global podcast called The Quiet Voices. Every episode featured a new guest, a janitor who stopped a tragedy, a nurse who read to a lonely patient, a bus driver who fed kids on his route. And at the end of each show, she always asked, what would you do? If you saw someone treated the way Keanu was, the answers never needed fame, just heart. The train reached its final station. People stood, stretched, and gathered their things. Keanu stood slowly, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. Before exiting, he turned to Stella. You ever wonder, he said, why people notice the little things more after something big happens? She thought about it. Maybe because big things break the noise, she said. And what's left is truth. He smiled. Truth deserves silence sometimes. It gives it more room to breathe. With that, he stepped onto the platform. Snow fell gently. A child waved, he waved back. No speeches, no attention. Just a man walking away from a train and toward whatever came next. But behind him, the seat he once took sat empty. Not forgotten. Honored, a small plaque had been fixed just beneath the window, Seat 12B, where the world remembered how to be kind.